Hello friends, welcome to my video. I chose this well-loved Ashlyn Ella Ever After High doll to transform into Judy Garland's Dorothy Gale from The Wizard of Oz. I got her in a lot from eBay of these crusty old dolls, and honestly, the scruffier the better for me in terms of dolls. I know they've had a great life with their kid owner and they're coming to me to hopefully get pampered, have a makeover, and then have this new life. This is a total matted mess. We're gonna give her a new do, so right now this mop is off. I'm not being super careful right now because I'm gonna trim it again in a minute. I'm using my hairdryer to soften the vinyl head to make it easier to get off without damaging the body or the neck peg. I probably could have left her head on for this makeover, to be honest, but while I was prepping the doll, I hadn't totally decided how I was gonna go about this project. Every doll is different in terms of getting their head off, and I'm still worried about breakages, especially because I'm drawn towards dolls that might be a little bit more damaged or older, and I am by no means an experienced doll decapitator. This one came off with a no fuss. I'm using some tiny cheapo scissors from the sewing section of Daiso to try and cut the hair close to their head here. It makes it a little easier to pull the hair through the scalp. I'm using my old tweezers to scrape the hair from the inside of the scalp, and then later we're going to pull it through the neck hole. Does this happen to anyone else? Please tell me in the comments if you have a less painful way to do this. I think I had to pain pause like 5 times doing this. Now I'm going to try and pull the glue out. It's so gross, but so satisfying. If you squish the head around, you can get it out more easily, I find. We need to take her factory paint off. I use cotton pads. I live in Japan, and one of the many joys of living here is Japanese naming. Clean puff. So cute. So this is just pure acetone. It says on the label that it's acetone nail polish remover, but the ingredients just say acetone. This is just the same way that you would take off nail polish. Try not to push the paint around by using a fresh cotton puff quite quickly. I know that I want to blush this doll, so I'm going to use a craft knife to just pare down the seams from where she was cast in the mold. I don't show it in this video, but I sanded her whole body as well, which I do that in front of the TV because it's pretty boring and it takes quite a while. The mold lines probably would have been taken care of during the sanding as well. I'm just feeling her body as well, just to check if I can feel the raised parts and then cutting off any excess plastic that I find. I'm going to wash both her head and her sanded body with warm soapy water and then dry them. Then they both get primed with 3 layers of Mr. Super Clear. Okay, so onto the clothes. I made a shirt pattern using masking tape, drew around my pattern pieces with just a regular pencil. All these lines are going to be hidden in the seam allowance anyway. This is a fabric glue that I got from a 100 yen store. I Google translated the glue type and it said it was called ethylene vinyl acetate resin glue. I have no idea what that is. If I were in another country, I would use Freytech and put it in a little squeezy bottle and use it in the same way, or use a paintbrush and paint along the pattern lines. Once the glue's dried, I then cut along the original pattern lines, and this takes care of any of the fraying. I'm sewing a running stitch along the neckline of the shirt and pulling it to gather it. I'm anchoring it either end with a couple of back stitches. This is going to give those ruffles that Dorothy's shirt has in the movie. I'm doing the same with the sleeve to make it kind of a puff ball. I'm only gathering the top edge though, and then the bottom edge is just hemmed normally. So once I've sewn the shoulder seams of the shirt together, I'm sewing in the sleeve. I find it easiest to do a couple of stitches right in the middle and then sew either side of the sleeve in. Once I've done that, I'm just going to sew straight down the side seam, cutting a rectangle here to make the high collar. I've put the shirt onto the doll. This way I can see the right height of the collar. Then I'm just going to pin it and hem it down. Now the iconic gingham dress. I made another masking tape pattern and drew around it and glued the edges in the same way that I did the shirt. I'm just laying the pieces out so that I don't confuse what goes where. This piece does need some darts sewing in for the bust. This will make sure that it's form-fitting. In the frame you can see some long tapes. Those were actually going to be for the straps, but I changed my mind. I'll explain that in a minute though. I've sewn the darts on either side of the front piece of the bodice, and now we're going to sew in the side panels. Oh, for goodness sake. It's fine, I have multiple pairs of scissors. Just going to take all the stitches out, double check that it is right sides together, sew from the outside, put it back together. Okay, it's fine this time. I've put the shirt on my doll. I'm just finding where I want the top hem to be and then turning it down and sewing it in place. Here I'm just making some bias tape. This is going to become the waistband, straps and some detail at the bottom of the skirt. Quick freeze frame. I've hemmed either side of a couple of those strips to make some straps for the dress. The hems are towards the body so you can't see them. Another piece of that fabric is the waistband, which is on top, sandwiching those straps with the bodice. I've sewn along that to hold the straps down. I'm now just checking where the straps need to be in the back of the dress and how long they need to be, and then sewing those in as well. The skirt is really simple. It's a rectangle that's been gathered with a running stitch. I'm trying to make the gathers look even, which is a bit harder than you'd think on such a small scale. I then pinned it and sewed all the way along. Moment of truth, unfold. Oh, it's so cute. Can I praise my own stuff like that? Is that okay? I put the dress back onto the doll to figure out how long I want the skirt to be on her. I've pinned it in place. I really want this edge to be crisp and I don't want any folds in it, so I'm going to iron it with my straighteners. Pin the trim on the bottom of the skirt as well. You can see how the gingham is diagonal here. It's just such a cute touch that the costume designer included. Oh, visitor. So in my dress, sewing the trim on is actually taking care of sewing on my hem. So I'm trying to make these stitches invisible but kind of strong. They're not structural or anything, I just don't have faith in my own sewing. Another visitor. Again, right sides together, so dress is inside out. So most of the way up the back of the skirt. I'm using a cotton jersey. I start with a little square and pin it close to the doll's foot, stretching it a little bit and then sew her foot in tight. Don't sew the whole way up because these are going to be rolled down, which means we need to change which side the seam is on. I'm cutting these out really close to the stitches. I don't want any extra bulk from the seam. I've left the extra at the top for now though to hold on to while I'm sewing. I'll cut it off later. I love tiny doll socks, they're just so cute. Don't worry about using any kind of fray check on this. The kind of fabric doesn't really fray, and actually that fray check will stop the fabric from stretching properly. I'm just going to work around the cat at this point. So this is a red air drying polymer clay that I got from Daiso, which I'm going to use for the shoes. I've also got this random Chinese polymer clay that came off eBay. This one's a bakeable one. So I'm taking a piece of this white clay and then just squishing it on the doll's feet, which have the socks on and are covered in cling film. So then I'm taking it off quite carefully and then baking it to package instructions. I'm using little pieces of skewers to be the base of the heels, which I'm using hot glue to stick to the soles. Then I'm rolling out this polymer clay with the beer can to build up the shape of the heel. A different cat now. So these are going to get some serious sanding. This is my not quite Dremel tool. Make sure you remove cat before sanding, by the way. Please wear eye protection and something over your mouth. I was really blasé about this and I immediately inhaled something and got something else in my eye. For the shoes uppers, I'm kind of making them in the way that I'd make a wig cat. So I made a pattern for the top of the shoe. I'm then cutting it out of a stretch fabric and then doing a few coats of PVA glue or tacky glue and waiting for that to set. I'm cutting out the shape that I want the uppers to be along the line of the sole, and then also around the top where her foot will go in. Now I'm just checking the fit, and then I'm going to glue the uppers to the soles. And magically, they are now red. I forgot to film it apparently. I used some red acrylic paint to colour them. I think I did just 2 coats. This is just a base for the glitter anyway, which I'm doing now. So a bit of PVA glue, then I'm pouring the glitter over and repeat until spangly. Dorothy is usually shown with her little wicker basket. I used an empty cat food box, and then what you can see in the frame is called paper tape, and I'm weaving that in between the spokes to build up the wicker basket. Measuring the size of the opening. Also cut the lid out of a cat food box and then cut these slits so that I can weave the paper tape like I did with the basket base. Then I wrap the edge with more paper tape. Then I cut the whole thing in half. This is so that the lid can open like a real wicker basket. This little piece of cardboard will be part of the hinge holding the lid to the basket. And again, I'm using more paper tape and PVA glue to attach the top. Okay, onto the face. I find making the first marks really hard. I hesitated and changed colours here for about 30 minutes before finally starting to sketch out the eyes. I'm using Faber-Castell Albrecht Dürer pencils. I chose this light brown colour and then immediately erased it anyway. This is a kneaded eraser that's available in Japan. I'm drawing her eyes wide and also a little bit turned down. Think puppy dog eyes. Sweet and innocent, which is what I was hoping for with this doll. I'm finding it pretty hard to get the eyes even, and you can see me going back and forth between left and right. I find that easier than drawing one entire eye and then copying it over to the other side. This eraser, absolute gold. It's a Mono Tombow pencil eraser, square type. I'll put a link in the description box, but I'm not sure if it's available outside of Japan. I highly recommend it. When I use pastels for blushing and contouring, I find it super helpful to use a little piece of sandpaper, almost as like a palette. The sandpaper holds onto the dust enough, but it also lets you pick up the dust with your brush pretty easily. I'm first using a colour that's only a tiny bit darker than the doll's skin tone, basically as a contour, so where her eye creases would be, under her cheekbones, the sides of her nose. The shading that I'm doing around her mouth will make it appear more like she's smiling. I'm using the rosy red tone here as a blusher, first on the apples of her cheeks, but then also between her eyebrows. Years ago, I'd watched Nicole's Dreams, and she would always put some blusher here, and I just think it looks so pretty. I'm using that same rosy blush colour to kind of shade where I'll put the eyebrows. I saw Delightful doing this in a couple of videos, and again, it's something that I think is so pretty and wanted to try. I'm drawing her eyebrows pulled up in the middle to try and make her look a little bit worried and add to that innocent look. In most of The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy has this super cute, worried expression, which I wanted for my doll. I forgot to film this part. I've darkened the outside of the irises and then I filled them in with a light brown colour. I'm also doing the first layer of white on the eye whites. I've used quite a bright red colour to draw in the first pass of her waterline. Don't worry, it won't stay that bright. I used the rosy red colour to blush her lips and then sealed her with another coat of Mr. Super Clear. I'm darkening the middle of the brows here with that same rosy tone. I'm using a super sharp cool brown pencil to draw the line between her lips, and I'm turning that line up a little bit at the corners of her mouth to give her a little bit of a smile. The face mold does have a soft smile, and I'm just trying to make that a little bit more visible. The colour core of this broke. Sandpaper palette to the rescue. Those pieces of lead that dropped out, if this happens to you, don't throw them away. Use that tiny piece of pencil core and scribble it on your sandpaper. You can then use the pigment with a super tiny skinny paintbrush, and then at least you still have the colour. So blush again. This time I'm using the more purple colour. Humans naturally have variation in their skin tone. I'm using this pinky tone to give Dorothy a kind of natural looking lip base. Using a small paintbrush and pastel dust, I'm shading the irises. I'm using a pale yellow here to highlight the lower part of the irises, which would naturally catch more light. Even though Dorothy has brown eyes, I'll be using lots of different colours to give them more dimension. Here I'm using pastel dust to add the shape of the eyebrows. This time, I'm taking my time to be careful and get the shape that I really do want in the end. I turn the doll's head round quite a lot. Part of this is because I have some damage to my right hand, which is reducing how much I can move it. Also, most people can draw a curve one way better than the other. Here I'm using a rusty orange brown tone and putting my hand right in front of the camera so that you can't see what I'm doing. Sorry, this is going to be an ongoing theme from now on. With a super sharp brown pencil, I'm drawing the crease line. Using my palest peach tone, I'm colouring the upper lids. This will give the illusion that they're further forward than the crease line, and so the shade that I did on the crease line will push that back. It'll give more dimension to the doll's eyes. Using a super sharp pencil to draw in the hairs of her eyebrows. Starting with this medium pink colour, I'm trying to draw in lines, kind of in the way that lips have those natural wrinkles. Then I'm using this plum colour to contour and also redrawing that line between the lips that I just lost. Back to the lines with a slightly darker pink, and then with a cherry red. I don't want her to look like she's wearing red lipstick. Here I'm using a pure white pastel to add highlights to Dorothy's face. When I seal with Mr. Superclear, the vibrancy is going to be taken down. So back onto the whites of the eyes, adding some grey to the sclera to make them look more spherical. Here I'm drawing hairs in a pale peach colour. This makes the eyebrows look a little bit fuller. So super sharp black pencil here. I'm going to tight line the upper waterline. I try and go really slowly here, especially when working with black. with a cool dark brown pencil, super sharp again, I'm working on the bottom waterline and the bottom lashes and getting both my hand and my head completely in the way. Sorry about that. This really is the hardest part of the face up for me. I feel like getting in close helps, but not really. I don't like how the lashes turned out. I've not really liked it on any doll I've done so far. Apparently, because I don't like drawing eyelashes, I just completely accidentally, on purpose maybe, forgot to do them on the upper lid. Oops. I'm using that pale peach again to add some shines to the waterline and the last highlights to her face. So under the brows, her cupid's bow, the tip of her nose, and then I'm using an eyeshadow applicator to blend again. So I'm going to start adding the catch lights to her eyes here. I like to use a pencil first because it's not opaque. You get that translucent little shine, which I think looks really pretty. Okay, so now I'm using the watercolour effect of my white pencil to add the whitest white highlights here. This is one of the reasons that I don't use the watercolour effect just for the Slayer. I like that there's that difference between the off-white and then the bright white highlight. And the face up is done. So onto her hair. I decided to make a wig from this thick brown yarn. So I cut the lengths and then brushed them out and straightened them to make doll hair. Let me know in the comments if you want to see how I do that in another video. It always blows my mind how you can go from just regular acrylic yarn to silky doll hair so easily. This is a wig cap that I made for another project. If you want to see how I made it again, let me know in the comments. I'm just roughly trimming it first and then marking where I want to cut it for the doll. I want to be quite careful and maybe cut it a little bit bigger first. Now I'm just marking where I want the parting to be for Dorothy's pigtails. EVA glue again. First I'm sticking the wefts all around the hairline. And then I'm filling either side of the part, trying to leave a gap to add the wefts to make the parting. The wefts for the parting need to be glued the opposite way that you want the hair to lay. So glued side is, this is harder to explain than it is to show, and I didn't show it, sorry. I actually watched Mazekito's wig tutorials multiple times to make this wig. She is the wig making queen. I let the wig totally dry overnight before beginning to style it. I filmed this pretty badly, sorry again. This was actually one of the trickiest parts of the project. I thought that Dorothy wore her hair in 2 French braids, but actually now I think that her hair is kind of twisted away from her face. Not actually sure if that would have been any easier to do. So I can French plait my own hair in about a minute, but when I went through the footage for this, I had over an hour. I had to keep restarting. There's not much to hold on to. In one way it is easier than human hair because when you drop the section, it doesn't just disappear back into the hair, so it's pretty easy to pick that back up again. It's just so fiddly. I tied the braids off with sewing thread, and then around the thread I put some pale blue ribbon. Okay, onto body blushing. I'm using the same pastel colours that I used on the face to blush the body. A lot of BJD artists will blush the joints of the doll pinky red colour. So if you look at my hands, which are very pale, around my knuckles you can see that there's a little bit more colour. On me I'm a little bit pink, and this is true of all my joints, and if you look at humans it is apparent, more so on some people than others. I think this on dolls just looks so pretty, so I wanted to include it. Because I'm an absolute sadist, I did this all on her hands too. I've sealed both her face and body with Mr. Super Clear, but as added insurance, I'm going to use Liquitex Matte Varnish. Okay, now I'm using Liquitex gloss varnish to go over her lips and eyes. I'm so happy with how the face and body turned out. It's definitely my best work so far, and I can see my improvement. I'm not perfect, but I can see that I'm getting better at this. I'm just warming the head a little bit here so that I can get it back on the doll without damaging anything. Oh, what? So I guess the face up splitted. Splat? What's the past tense of split? The face up cracked. Oh, it looks like she's drooling. Anyway, let's put our poor dribbly girl back together. Honestly, I just wanted to take the whole face off and redo it at this point, but I'm trying to keep all my faces for at least a year to make sure that I can see my progression and learn from my mistakes. So this mistake was, I don't know, over squishing. I don't even know how I could have avoided this, but potentially I'm not supposed to heat the head up to get it back on, or heat the neck peg. I don't know. No idea. The drooling really isn't great. I think she looks kind of vapid actually. I was going for cute and innocent, but now she just, I don't know. I do think she looks cute despite her drooling. I did learn things along the way, which is kind of what this journey's about, and there's some things I do the same, some things I do differently. I try not to crack her face up, for one thing, for sure. Thank you so much for watching my entire video. That's super cool that you stayed all the way till the end. If you liked it, please give me a like. If you want to know anything or have any concerns, comments, tips, tricks, please leave me a comment. And subscribe if you want to see more. Hopefully I will get another video up in another 2 weeks. And yeah, thank you again and see you soon. Bye bye.